During my absence, the channel grew a little bit and received a lot of comments from you guys, especially questions about the National Caregiver Certification Exam here in Japan. To make up for all of you, I've decided to compile all those questions and answer all of them in this video. Please note that I will be citing several websites, most of which are written in Japanese, to make all my answers to all your questions legitimate. I will be leaving the links, all of those links to those websites in the description down below. Make sure to check all of them later for your reference. So without further ado, let's begin. Welcome back to NikkoVenture. Who can take the exam? Obviously, not everyone can apply and take on the exam. There are requirements that you need to meet in order to qualify. There are rules that Japan has set in accepting people who want to take on the National Caregiver Certification Exam. Needless to say, those rules are different for us foreigners. There are 4 routes that a foreigner can choose from in order to take on the National Caregiver Certification Exam. Please note that I'm talking about foreigners who are not currently here in this country. That is, those foreigners who are currently in their home countries now but are willing to study, work, and come here in Japan as caregivers later. The first route is called the Yosei Shisetsu route, or the training facility route. In this route, you have to apply for a Japanese student visa. Basically, under this route, you will become a Gaikokujin Ryugakusei, or a foreign student. You will come here in Japan as a student. As a foreign student under this route, you will have to enroll in a Yosei Shisetsu, a training facility or a school for caregivers and the like, located, obviously, here in Japan. You will have to study in that training facility for 2 straight years. Only after you studied in that training facility or in that caregiving school for 2 straight years are you eligible to apply for the National Caregiver Certification Exam. The good thing about this route, this Yosei Shisetsu route, is that after 2 years, after you graduate from a said Yosei Shisetsu, before the end of the year 2026, you will become a Kaigo Fukushishi or a certified care worker here in Japan, whether you pass the exam or not. If for some reason or another you failed or didn't take the National Caregiver Certification Exam, all you have to do is to render 5 straight years of work as a caregiver here in Japan immediately after graduating from a Yosei Shisetsu. During those 5 years, you will be registered as a Kaigo Fukushishi or a certified caregiver here in Japan. You can also retake the National Caregiver Certification Exam during those 5 years if you want to prove something. However, it is not compulsory. After those 5 long years, if you still want to continue being a Kaigo Fukushishi, all you have to do is to continue working as a caregiver here in Japan. The second route is the Jitsumu Keiken route, or the Practical Work Experience route. This route is for those who are going to come here to Japan under the Gino Jishu Seido, or the Technical Intern Training Program, TITP. As a TITP trainee under this program, you will have to render 3 years or more of caregiving-related work here in Japan. It is only after rendering 3 or more years of caregiving-related work here in Japan are you eligible to take on or apply for the National Caregiver Certification Exam. Passing the exam will allow you to work here in Japan as a caregiver indefinitely. If you fail, you may still be able to retake the exam before your contract as a TITP trainee expires. Please note that having 3 or more years of caregiving-related work here in Japan is not the only requirements for those TITP trainees who want to take on the exam. There are still written and practical tests that you need to take and of course pass in order to apply for the said exam. Once your contract as a TITP trainee expires and you still are not able to pass the National Caregiver Certification Exam, as per the mechanisms laid out by this country's government, you have to leave Japan and go back to your respective home countries. Or, a TITP trainee, you can shift into the Tokute Gino Seido, or the Specified Skilled Worker Program. By doing so, the foreigner, you, may be able to extend your employment status here in Japan for a total of 5 years. Of course, doing this will also give you ample amount of time to study and pass the said exam. The third route is the Keizai Renke Kyote route, or more commonly the Economic Partnership Agreement route, the EPA route. In this route, a foreigner will enter Japan as a Kaigo Fukushishi Kohosha, or a caregiver applicant under the EPA program of Japan and your home country. As far as I know, the EPA program relating to caregiving is open to the countries of Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Regardless, an EPA applicant or an EPA caregiver applicant upon coming here to Japan must render 3 straight years of work as a care worker while at the same time studying for the National Caregiver Certification Exam. Only after rendering 3 years or more of work or caregiving related work and studies is an EPA applicant become eligible to apply for the said exam. Passing the exam will allow the EPA applicant, you, to work here in Japan as a caregiver indefinitely. Failing it, well, you can either go home after your EPA contract expires, or just like the Ginno Jishu Seido or the TATP trainees, an EPA applicant may be able to transition into Tokutei Ginno Seido. The last route is for those who plans to come and work here in this country under the Tokutei Ginno Seido, or in English, the Specified Skilled Worker Program number 1. That's because this specific program has 2 types, simply named number 1 and number 2. Under this route, a foreigner must achieve the accepted standards for both the practical and JLPT examinations before being able to come here in this country. After that, you will be able to work here in Japan as a caregiver for a total of 5 years. Rendering 3 years of more during that time will make you eligible to apply for the National Caregiver Certification Exam. The same with the Jitsumo Keiken route for TATP trainees, having 3 years or more of caregiving related work here in Japan is not the only requirement for those under the Tokutei Ginno Seido who plans to take on the National Caregiver Certification Exam. There are still written and practical tests that you need to take and pass in order to apply for the said exam. Of course, passing this exam will allow you to transition your current visa into the caregiver work visa and work here in Japan indefinitely. If for some reason or another you still fail the exam upon the expiration of your current Tokutei Ginno Seido contract and you don't have any other options at all, you have to vacate this country and go back to your own. So to sum it up, these are the people who can take on the National Caregiver Certification Exam under the 4 routes we just discussed. Kindly remember though that for TATP trainees and for those holding an SSW number 1 visa, it is not enough to have 3 years or more of caregiving related work here in Japan. There's still other requirements you need to meet in order to qualify to take on the National Caregiver Certification Exam. Is caregiving work experience needed to take on the exam? Except for those under the student visa program, you need to have 3 years or more of caregiving related work here in Japan. If you've been working as a caregiver for over a century in your home country, I'm very sorry to say, it's not counted as an experience to qualify for the exam. The caregiving experience required to take on the exam must be experienced here in Japan. Can caregiving graduates take the exam? I will take this question as, can I take the National Caregiving Certification Exam in Japan even if I'm a caregiving graduate in my home country? As far as I know, yes, as long as you have the Caregiving NC2 certification from TESDA. For those non-Filipinos watching this video, TESDA is a government agency that provides education, training, and skill development programs for those who want to work abroad. However, it is important to remember that even if you graduated from a caregiving school in your home country, you still need to come here to Japan to take on the exam. You cannot take the exam outside of Japan. And you can come here to Japan by applying for a student or a specified skilled worker visa or becoming a TITP trainee or an EPA applicant. Is JLPT N3 level required for the exam? No. It is advisable to have at least an N3 level of JLPT or above before taking on the exam because the kanjis and the sentence patterns used in the exam can be learned in the N3 level of JLPT. However, having an N3 level JLPT or above is not required. If you're confident enough with your JLPT N5, you can definitely take on the exam. Indeed, the chances of passing the exam is greater the higher your JLPT level is. But for me, it's not about your JLPT level. It's about your ability to fully comprehend and wholly grasp the Japanese language. I've been in the same room with an N3 or N2 people, and suffice it to say, I'm not really impressed with their language skills. I'm not trying to boast, I'm just stating one fact. Your JLPT level doesn't define your Japanese language skill. Don't ever think that just because you have a low JLPT level, you don't have any chances of passing the exam. No. Remember, the things you're studying for the JLPT is vastly different from the things you will study for the caregiving exam. There may be some similarities, but it's not that many. Utilize the JLPT to increase or improve your vocabulary and language skills, but focus on studying for the National Caregiver Certification Exam. I took and passed the exam on the same Japanese year I applied. My JLPT level, N4. What are the tutoring schools and books for the exam? I've already made a video about the books I used when I was still studying in a caregiving college here in Japan. I left a link to those books in the description below. Go ahead and check it later. As for the tutoring schools, as far as I know, there are no tutoring schools here in Japan. What they have here though are the aforementioned Yosei Shisetsu, which are technical or vocational schools or colleges specializing in various fields such as caregiving, physical therapy, and the like. Don't forget to click that like button. Thank you so much. They are commonly known here in this country as Senmon-gakko. And yes, some of these Senmon-gakko accepts foreigners with the right qualifications. And no, they don't speak English there. No, English no. All of the books and materials used for learning are written in Japanese. Which makes sense though if you think about it. Remember, you're studying for an exam written 99% in raw Japanese. And most, if not all of the people you will be working with in a Japanese caregiving home are Japanese-speaking Japanese. I left a link to a list of Yosei Shisetsu in Japan for caregivers down below. You can go ahead and check it. It's there for your reference. And as far as I know, Yosei Shisetsu training facilities for caregivers are only found within the borders of the Japanese archipelago. How to apply for the exam? Unfortunately, I was still a student here in Japan when I applied for the exam. I just signed some papers and the rest was done for me by the school staff. Fortunately though, I did some research and found a website that guides you on how to apply for the exam. The website though is written in Japanese. I left a link to that particular website in the description below. You can go ahead and check it later if you want to, or if you really want to, you can go ahead and check it now. Note that registering for the exam is not free. There will be corresponding fees. Again, the fees and other important information can be found in the link I left down below. Is the exam written in English? No. Contrary to popular belief, the majority of Japanese people cannot speak English fluently. The national language here is Japanese. English is almost non-existent. Some can speak English, but they're rare. It's like finding a shiny Pokemon. The hard truth is that almost everything here, from above your head to below your feet, is written in Japanese, and that includes written examinations relating to caregiving. Furthermore, there are also no English options in the exam. They will give the exam to you in raw Japanese. Yes, there are some English words in the exam, but almost all of them are just there as an English translation for the Japanese medical terminologies. In other words, they are borderline useless. What is the form of the exam? The exam, although written in Japanese, is in pure multiple choice format, A, B, C, D. You don't have to worry about questions asking you to write the answer in kanji. No. The choices will be given to you. All you have to do is to choose the correct one and shade the corresponding letter in your answer sheet. Although you don't need to write the answer in kanji, you still need to know how to read and understand the Japanese language. As I've said earlier, the exam is written 99.9% in raw Japanese, and that includes the hiragana, katakana, and of course, kanji. What is the passing score? The passing score varies depending on the amount of applicants, passers, and other various factors. It's still so confusing for me as well, but it is widely accepted that the fewer passers the exam has, the lesser or the lower the passing score is. In contrast, if there are a lot of exam passers, the higher the passing score is. Regardless, although the passing score varies from year to year, it might be better for you to aim for a score of at least 80 points and above. As mentioned by our Japanese professor years prior, obtaining 80 points and above has a higher guarantee of passing the National Caregiver Certification Exam. Should you go back home if you fail the exam? If you're a student visa holder and you graduated from a Yosei Shisetsu in this country, you can still remain here in this country even if you failed or didn't take the National Caregiver Certification Exam. That's because of a revised law that allows those who failed or didn't take the National Caregiver Certification Exam to become a Kaigo Fukushishi, provided that you graduated from a Yosei Shisetsu in Japan before the end of the year 2026. And provided that you work as a caregiver for 5 straight years in this country immediately after graduating from a Yosei Shisetsu in Japan. On the other hand, if you're a TATP trainee or an EPA applicant, there's a huge chance that you may be forced to go back to your home country if you still fail the National Caregiver Certification Exam and you exhaust all your chances to retake it. And of course, if your current contract expires. I understand that some of us don't want to go home just yet.
No. Wait.
So, what do most of us do? TITP trainees and to some extent EPA applicants tend to transition into the Tokute Gino Seido or the Specified Skilled Worker Program. By doing so, they can extend their time working and living in this country and of course have more time to study and retake the exam. However, once the Specified Skilled Worker Program or the visa under this program expires and you don't have any other options left, then you should leave this country and go back to your own. Is there a limit to taking the exam? On paper, there's no limit in taking on the National Caregiver Certification Exam. You can take the exam until you eventually pass it. However, please bear in mind that if you're a TITP trainee or an EPA applicant, your stay here in this country is limited by your contract. And that limitation also applies to the number of exam retakes you can have. In other words, if you only have 2 years before your current contract expires, then you only have 2 chances to retake the exam. And that is because the National Caregiver Certification Exam is only done once a year. If you only have 3 years before your current contract expires, that only gives you 3 chances to retake the exam. 4 years left, 4 chances to retake the exam. So on and so forth. Technically, there's no limit in taking the exam, but as a foreigner, your visa or your contract has limitations or it expires. And you can only take the exam with a valid contract and of course, a valid unexpired visa. Is it possible to do non-caregiving jobs after passing the exam? After passing the exam, you will transition into the nursing care or the caregiving work visa, which allows you to work in this country as a care worker indefinitely. Of course, you still need to renew this visa once in a while, but with this visa, you don't really need to worry about being forced to go back home. Furthermore, with the nursing care or the caregiving work visa, you can only do caregiving related jobs. Remember that a visa granted to you by any country has restrictions, whatever visa that is. Those restrictions limit your ability to do something while inside the border of a particular country. So, if your nursing care work work visa or your caregiving work visa has restrictions that only allows you to work caregiving related jobs. Even if you pass the National Caregiving Certification Exam with the highest scores in this country, you are only allowed to do a job that is caregiving related. If you want to do other jobs other than caregiving, non-caregiving jobs, secure a legal mean to do it. Can you use your Japanese caregiving certification outside of Japan? No, of course no. The exam will be done in Japan and will be written in Japanese. The purpose of the exam is to certify those who want to work as caregivers here in Japan. The certification or license you will receive after passing the National Caregiver Certification Exam is only valid while you're within the borders of the Japanese archipelago. Is there a salary increase after you pass the exam? Yes, there is. How much? That depends on your company. To be specific, the increase is an additional amount that plays on top of your basic salary as a caregiver. That additional amount is called shikaku teate and is added on top of your basic salary monthly. It's important to remember, however, that the amount you will receive from the company as a shikaku teate varies. It is not the same for all of us. Moreover, not everyone who passed the National Caregiver Certification Exam will receive a shikaku teate. In other words, it is the prerogative of the caregiving company if they will give their kaigo fukushishi a shikaku teate or not. If the company decides to give their kaigo fukushishi employees a shikaku teate, the amount will also be decided by the company. The minimum amount for a shikaku teate is around 1,000 yen. This graph shows us the shikaku teate for a social worker, certified care worker, and mental health social workers. Let's focus on the kaigo fukushishi. The red is for those who receive a shikaku teate of more than 1,000 Japanese yen, but less than 5,000 Japanese yen. 9.3% of the 120,067 certified care workers here in Japan as of the year 2008 receive this amount. 13.0% of those people receive a shikaku teate of more than 5,000 but less than 10,000 Japanese yen. 42.4% of us kaigo fukushishi here in Japan don't have a shikaku teate at all. That's almost half of the total 120,067 kaigo fukushishi or people who pass the National Caregiving Certification Exam here in Japan. So yeah, there's that. There are people who, despite the fact of passing the National Caregiving Certification Exam with decent or high points, doesn't have a shikaku teate. Is caregiving a better job than other jobs in Japan? Shit! I don't know. The only job I had until now upon coming here in this country is caregiving. I don't have any experience on other jobs at all in this country. So I am not in any position to compare caregiving to other jobs available for us foreigners in this country. But I do know that there are other jobs out there that pays a lot, and I mean a lot more than caregiving. So salary-wise, caregiving is not better than other jobs who pays a lot more. Obviously. But if you're into service and taking care of the sick, the old, and the weary, caregiving or even nursing might be for you. So that's it for this video. I do hope I answered your questions correctly. If you have any follow-up questions though, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. I will answer them as soon as I can. Again, for your reference, I left all my sources in the description box down below. Please do make time to read all of them, even if most of them are written in Japanese. You can use Google Translate, dude. I really do apologize for not being able to publish videos regularly for you. It's been hard for me physically, mentally, emotionally lately. Rest assured, I'm doing my best, my very best, to provide you the best quality videos you definitely deserve. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and of course a comment. I do read your comments, by the way. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Thank you so much for your time watching this video. See you in the next one.